Welcome back, everybody, to Brown Bag Bets, powered by Betsperts. We are your daily dose of quick hit handicapping and sports betting picks. As you can probably tell, Noops and Andy aren't here. Noops, I think, is in the air somewhere. Andy just landed. I should have sent him the link and told him to pop in, but was getting ready to do the show. Nevertheless, I'm producer Dan, and Matt Rooney is here with us. Matt's like, I was thinking about it, he's like our sixth man, our utility infielder. He is the guy who is here whenever we need someone to fill in, and I
don't have a regular role, but I play like 4 or 5, like 3 or 4 times a week. Like I don't really know exactly what my role is. I just sometimes just see my name on the lineup card. I don't know if you guys saw Andy's tweets this morning from the airport, though. He was tweeting at about 4:30 being at the airport, which I guess it's fine if you're on the early flight, but then complaining he was in the wrong terminal, that he couldn't get his breakfast chicken wings at 4:30 in the morning. I don't know about you guys. I love wings. No. Get those away for it. I need to be at least like a late lunch for some wings.
It wasn't breakfast chicken wings. It was the Bloody Mary that just so happens to have a chicken wing as a garnish. So,
and you're telling me he wouldn't get a couple extra wings on the side?
I mean, I wouldn't, but like, yeah, I'm only eating chicken wings if I'm watching sports. But nevertheless, football is back. I feel like I've said that 10 different times on shows, but the NFL season kicks off tonight with the Bills and the Rams at beautiful SoFi. The place where the season ended last year is the place where the season starts tonight. And we wanted to bring on someone to talk some football, someone who is a serious NFL bettor and expert. And the beautiful thing about the Betsperts Media and Technology Group is an expert on anything NFL is just a Slack message away. So the sports betting manager for 4 for 4 for Betsperts, you can see him on Betsperts Golf regularly. Ryan Noonan is joining us. Ryan, thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here with producer Dan and our Juan Uribe of the Betsperts group, which is Matt, who fills in and wears. Both of you wear a ton of hats, so. Obviously a brown bag fan and excited to get here finally, right? All the cliches of, it's Christmas Day for us in this industry. And yeah, we got a great one to kick it off. So I'm excited to talk ball with you boys.
How excited are you to stop guessing on the, like, future bets are awesome, but like, it's just guess. Like Dan and I do college football and like leading up into week 0, week 1, like you kind of know some of these teams, but man, it's just guessing. It's hoping you get stuff right. It's hoping certain guys. How excited are you to get week 1 in the books and actually have some real live, like, this is actually what these guys look like?
Yeah, I mean, my pushback on that would be, like, essentially with football, we're guessing all season because we have such a small sample size and we really have to make, they're matchup based, takes and, that very, you can skew. You go back to thinking last year, Green Bay, New Orleans, and, New Orleans just blows the doors off of the Packers in week 1. And everyone's like, well, what's going on with the Saints? Is this the year that it's the last dance in Green Bay? Is that a problem? And all of a sudden they roll to the number 1 seed. The Saints can't keep it together. So it's hard to not overreact. It's what I think week 2 is probably one of the best weeks to bet on because there's so much overreaction in the market. But yeah, I get it. It's real football. Preseason football just doesn't do it for me. I can't get down on preseason football. I don't feel like there's any real betting edge to be had based off of what we assume to be minimal playing time or limited playing time. So I don't spend a ton of time capping 5th and 6th stringers. So I don't really get excited about that. But yeah, we got real NFL football and I'm excited to watch a good matchup.
Before we get into talking betting angles and things that we're looking forward to, just as football fans and enjoyers of the sport of the NFL, I think we can all kind of opine on this, but we'll start with you, Noonan. What one storyline across what was really a wild offseason in the NFL, all of the quarterback movement, everything that happened in Cleveland and with Tom Brady and Russell Wilson and so on and so forth. What one storyline, if you had to pick one, what one storyline are you most interested in for this season? Doesn't have to be betting, just as a fan of football.
Yeah, this is really hard because there are so many, right? Because to Matt's point, we spend so much time guessing, make a guess in some form on every team, right? Whether it's, doing prep for all these. And the more I thought about this question, I'm really interested to see what happens with the Bengals. The presumed Super Bowl hangover that we see very often. And again, you see a lot of teams that have a 6.5 win total in the preseason end up in the Super Bowl. And I think there were a lot of reasons that they were going to be a real easy fade this year. But then you look at how the offseason went. They basically answered the one hole in the roster that they really had, which is the offensive line. 3 new starters, above average starters. And you have this defense that played maybe a little bit above water last year, but they made some nice additions in the draft, I think, to help solidify some depth, especially in the secondary. Pass rush is above average. And then really you have this core with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins that I want to continue to like be bullish on, right? So even though I think there are some things schedule-wise that weren't in their favor last year, they had a real nice break as far as how the playoff schedule broke out for them. So I get the regression piece. The schedule is going to be harder. Every road game in the division is in prime time for them this year, so that impacts a little bit of rest. But again, like I just want to buy Joe Burrow and this passing game. So I think that they're going to be a really interesting watch to see how they kind of handle things.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's a really good point about some of the additions they've made to this team. And I just think they're a fun team. Like, it's really hard to kind of want to root against Joe Burrow just because there's something about him that's fun. And Jamar Chase, he's just got that like cool edge about him. And it's a franchise that frankly, like both for us, like most of our lives, we don't remember the 80s when they were going to Super Bowls regularly. We just kind of remember that franchise being bad. So to see them on the uptick is cool. Matt, same question to you. What are you most excited about looking forward to this year?
Staying in the same conference, and this might be somewhat of a cop-out answer, but just the entire AFC West, because I don't think outside of the Chiefs finishing last place, which would surprise me because they're the Chiefs, but like, even with how good that division is, if they finished in last place with like a winning record, that wouldn't shock me. That division is so deep. The division is so good. They lost Tyreek Hill, but did some things. They added Juju. So I think he's going to be kind of he's not Tyreek Hill, but I think he's going to be a perfect fit kind of in that role. The Raiders went out and got Chandler Jones. Now they have 2 elite pass rushers. The Chargers have 2 elite pass rushers, and they add J.C. Jackson to that secondary. Denver's defense is going to be really good again. Is Russell Wilson kind of washed, or was Russell Wilson, just kind of disgruntled in Seattle with a system that didn't fit him? Is he in a brand new system now that he's going to be rejuvenated? Anything can happen in that division. And obviously the Bengals went to the Super Bowl last year, projected to be a 2-win team on the deep dive. But anything can happen all football, but like anything can happen in that division. And it wouldn't surprise me. You could have some really good teams not making the playoffs because that division is just going to beat up on each other. I personally like the Chargers, but like no one winning that division would surprise me at all whatsoever. It's so good. It's so deep. Anybody can win on any given Sunday in that division. So that's what I want to watch just because it's going to be great football.
Yeah, Matt stole my answer. So I'm
gotcha, Dan.
Because
you want me to do my real one?
No, I'm a content machine, so I can always just pivot on a dime. And I'll go to the NFC since we talked AFC. The San Francisco 49ers were very close to making the Super Bowl last year, and they've decided to turn their entire offense over to a quarterback who they barely played last year. Is this going to be kind of be a Kansas City Chiefs thing where the Chiefs were playing at a good level with Alex Smith, turned it over to Patrick Mahomes and went nuclear? Is that what we're going to see, or is Trey Lance not ready? Like, it's one of the most fascinating stories in the NFL. Like, the Buccaneers are probably going to be good if they're healthy. The Packers are probably going to be good if they're healthy. Like, we know the Rams are probably going to be good if they stay healthy. Like the Eagles everyone's high on the Eagles. I get it. Like, there's not a lot of like wide distribution, I think, amongst the contenders in the NFC other than San Francisco, where it's like, this could be something that goes nuclear, or this is something that could go very poorly. As we dive into expectations, at least in the betting market of things, Noonan, what one team or teams are you higher on than the market right now, and what team are you lower on than the market tends to be on right now?
I feel like, to your point, Dan, because there is so much of an open, the NFC is just wide open, and really the AFC, to Matt's point as well, because there are so many viable teams. I think the quality is obviously better in the AFC, but the team that I continue to be higher on, I think, is the Saints. Obviously losing Sean Payton is a problem, right? I don't want to pretend that it's not, but otherwise there's a lot of continuity here, right? Dennis Allen's been there for a while. He's moving up from obviously defensive coordinator to the head coach. Pete Carmichael stays on and will be handling the offensive coordinator job and taking on the play calling role left behind with Payton retiring. But like, there are so many things that are better here than they were last year. First, if you look at just health, offensively, they had the second most adjusted games lost due to injury last year, according to Football Outsiders. On the offensive side of the ball, we saw starts from Ian Book started last year for them, that was impactful. The Ian Book game, actually, the one game against Miami, real quick. Miami's defensive DVOA DVOA rating was 10th on the season. If you take away the Ian Book game, they were 17th. That's how bad the Ian Book game was last season. But now, again,
he's
the
not
upgrade
good.
Offensively, he's not good. No. But we're going from Marcus Callaway, Traquan Smith, and Deontay Harris to Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, and Jarvis Landry. It looks like Alvin Kamara is going to stay off of, the legal, suspended list or anything like that, at least until the offseason. So, again, the offensive line isn't as good as last year. Terran Armstead left, but they still a pretty good offensive line. These guys are plus money to make the playoffs here. We know that they have the number against the Bucs. The rest of the division, they get 2 games against the Falcons. I'm sorry, Dan. I think that the Panthers are better than people think. But again, I think the Saints are a better team here. So you can get them over 3.5 wins in the division. I think at -110 on Caesars, and then they're plus 120 to make the playoffs at BetMGM. So I like the Saints quite a bit.
I thought it was weird. My position on the Saints that I have right now, I took some Dennis Allen Coach of the Year because it was still sitting around, and this was a few weeks ago, still sitting around like 30-1, which didn't make any sense to me because I understand, like, it's hard for me to admit that the New Orleans Saints are going to be good as a Falcons fan, but like objectively, everything that you've said, everything that Drew and Andy have said, like, I totally understand why people think that the Saints are ascending, and like the Saints winning that division, which feels very possible the first year after Sean Payton. Like, if that happens, Jameis Winston, comeback player of the year, feels like that's a lock. I understand that. But like 30-1 for a coach on a team that could win a division in the conference where I think it's going to be, where I think the variation might be a little bit higher. Like the AFC, we know who's going to be good. And I think one of those good teams is probably going to get the top seed. Where in the NFC, we might see a surprise there. And on the flip side of the market, though, who are you not as high on as some people might be?
Yeah, I'm not really interested in anything that's going on with the Tennessee Titans these days. Again, I just think they're significantly worse than they were last year. Obviously, they outperformed a lot of metrics last year. Again, like one of the worst number 1 seeds of all time. And we saw how that played out in the playoffs. Offensive line is pretty bad. They lost some starters there. It's kind of just a unit that's been slowly getting worse year after year. And so is Ryan Tannehill, just kind of a 3-year regression, both in terms of clean pocket and against pressure. I mean, every quarterback is bad or not good against pressure, but what's happening with Tannehill when you look at the, against pressure numbers are pretty frightening. Now, again, not a lot of talent on the outside. They're going to run a lot of 2 receiver sets. They traded AJ Brown essentially straight up for, Treylon Burks, who's really struggling. And what we saw with Derrick Henry last year before he went down was troubling. When you look back at 2020, we saw 27.8% of his carries came against stack boxes, according to Next Gen Stats. Last year, it jumped almost 10%, 36.5%. And then the efficiency dropped massively. We had a 45.6% of his carries had more rushing yards than expected in that 2020 season. It was down last year to 37.8%. It just, again, I don't want to bet against a guy who's kind of a historical freak, but it is a problem here that the offensive line is getting worse as well. Now, the defense will be solid. They play in a crappy division. But again, like, I don't think that they should be really considered even kind of in the same ballpark as the Colts in this division. And you can get plus money on them to not make the playoffs. And we're talking about how loaded the AFC is. I mean, I think that they'd be the 5th best team in the AFC West, right? If you could add them to the AFC West, I think they are worse than all of those teams. I just don't see a path to the Titans making the playoffs. They'd have to win this division. And I think they are much closer to the Jags than they are to the Colts. So I'm fading the Titans.
All right. I have a couple questions regarding, I was talking with you before the show, your TikToks, big fan of your TikToks on the 4for4 Bets account, and basically giving out most of your preseason futures. First one, I want to talk about the AFC West because that was my most interesting storyline. Believe I saw you have the Chargers to win that division outright. Is that how you're betting the AFC West? And what was your approach this offseason when kind of deciding how to bet the AFC West?
Yeah, I mean, it's loaded. I think that they are the most complete roster on both sides of the ball. I think that there is still, as good as Justin Herbert has been, I think that there is more ceiling to be had there if they happen to turn him loose. He's just 21st last year in air yards per attempt, but he ranked 3rd in the league in adjusting completion percentage on passes 20 plus yards down the field. So we have a guy that is basically has shackles on still a little bit, where we know that he is accurate, he can push the ball down the field. They don't really allow him to do so. And I think that they have better weapons. I think Josh Palmer coming into his own a little bit in the second year adds a third body there to the receiver core. Again, you add Khalil Mack. You talked about it. You have to have these bookend elite defensive ends. And now Khalil Mack with Bosa there. J.C. Jackson obviously going to miss the start of the year. But again, just adds an element that they didn't have last year at corner. If they can just kind of stay healthy, which has been kind of their bugaboo for the last decade plus, the roster's always been pretty nice. But if they can stay healthy, I just think there's so much talent here. And Justin Herbert, I think, is still ascending, where the Chiefs' defense is a problem. There's going to be a ton of shootouts. I have questions about kind of how things go in Denver. I'm a little bullish on Denver too, but I think that they're not quite as good as the Chargers are. And then I have questions about the Raiders defense too. I think the Raiders are probably a little underrated in the market too, because everyone thinks they're clearly the fourth team. I think that offense can be really good, but I think the Chargers just have all the pieces there. Again, we can't predict injuries and some of those things. So I just want to look at the roster and the quarterback, who I think is ascending. So I like the Chargers, and it's plus 250. Great number.
All right. And then I also have to talk about the NFC North. Being a Bears fan, I got to bring it up. I saw your TikTok. Yes, I believe it was yesterday, but it's the one that I saw yesterday as well, having the Lions to finish third at plus 160. I've tried to take a step back and look at this as a neutral party and not a Bears fan. I truly don't understand why people think the Bears are going to be that much worse than the 6-11 team they were last year. When you did lose Khalil Mack, he also played about half the games last year when he was on the field, wasn't healthy. You lose Akeem Hicks, who barely played last year. You lose Allen Robinson, who was a shell of himself, had a career low in receptions, career low in targets, and quite honestly looked like he didn't want to be there last year. Other than that, you improve on the offensive line. You bring back Robert Quinn, who had a career year last year, set the franchise record in sacks for one of the most storied defensive franchises in NFL history. You make 2 draft picks in the secondary that improve there. Eddie Jackson can't be much worse. And I cannot stress this enough. You have brought in a coaching staff offensively that will not try and shoehorn Justin Fields into a system that he's not fit to run. So I don't understand why everybody is saying, 3-4 worst team in the NFL, number 1 overall pick. I don't see how they're worse than last year.
It's fair. I mean, we didn't see much for some of those guys. Like you mentioned, Hicks, Mack, Eddie Goldman. These guys have had difficulty staying on the field. Again, asking 2 rookies to step in and contribute. Again, I like both of these kids coming out. So I think Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker can be really good. And they're going to kind of need them to be right away. And to your point, the schedule is more advantageous than it was last year as well. I want to believe in the play calling. We just don't know a lot when we really haven't seen this staff call plays in the NFL before offensively. The offensive line, I think, is still going to be a massive issue. There's just not a lot of top 2 talent or depth here that they want. And I want to believe in Justin Fields. I'm a Patriots fan. I wanted the Pats to take him in the draft. I was excited for my Bear fans, my friends that are Bear fans, when they got Justin Fields, because I think the potential is there. I'm worried that when the season ends, they're still not going to know if he's the answer, because I don't think they're going to give him a fair shot here based off of the talent around him too. Again, Allen Robinson was a shell of himself last year, but the secondary pieces outside of Mooney, who I really think is kind of best suited to be a wide receiver 2.
He's a 1B2 for sure. He's not an elite receiver, but he's the next kind of step below that.
Yeah, I think he's super talented, and I think they can gel outside the pocket, and I think Fields can create plays. I think the pass rush is going to be a problem. They're going to be, I think, bad at stopping the run to get off the field in second halves. I just think there's a lot of downside here too with what can happen with the Bears. Now, again, schedule's nice. That works. I think the lines are probably closer to the Bears than everyone thinks. I think there's a lot of smart people wanting to restore the roar, and I think it's really gone way too far. I think the Lions defense is still a massive problem, especially in the secondary. I think they're going to have to be, again, elite out front, and I just don't think that they are. And again, I think your ceiling is capped with Jared Goff at quarterback too, right? So I'm with you. I think that they're probably closer. I just think the Bears are probably, in my opinion, comfortably the worst team in the division.
So I knew this was going to go long, and that's bad producing on my part to ask too many questions. So
I don't talk as much as Andy, but I can get going, so I apologize.
It's all good.
You say a lot more stuff that makes more sense than Andy. Andy tends to I don't want to say ramble, but
No, it's been a great conversation, and we'll keep it going as we move on to tonight's game, the actual game that's on the field this evening. Bills and Rams probably should have been the Super Bowl matchup last year, but that's neither here nor there. The Bills are 2.5-point favorites on the road. I think they opened +1. It is now out to 2.5. John Ewing on Twitter put this out yesterday. In the past 10 years, teams that become bigger favorites in week 1 have gone 32-51-2, which is 39% against the spread. So the Bills going from a 1-point underdog to a 2.5-point favorite fit this bill. Noonan, what do you expect to see tonight in our first game of the NFL season?
I'm interested to see how this plays out. Again, the line movement is notable, but not crazy, right? Again, I think when we move from the Bills being a slight dog to a favorite is interesting. But again, we're really dealing with, we're still short of 3. And I think that's important to understand key numbers. When we're moving from 0 or, even Bills -1 to Bills -2.5, it's just not really super impactful as far as the line goes. I'm interested to see this Rams offensive line hold up against a Bills pass rush, which I think is going to be improved. I'm interested to see what happens with the Rams backfield usage. Sean McVay has typically been a one-horse guy in the backfield. There's been a lot of talk with Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson in this offseason about both of them being involved. Really want to see what that usage looks like in week 1. One of the bets that we made over at 4for4, which is actually still available. We've been kind of on maybe the wrong side of the market, but wanting to shade a little bit under on Cam Akers' total yards because I think we're going to see a little bit more Henderson. So that's still out there at most places at like 62.5. I just don't think he has a massive passing game role. He was obviously coming back too quickly from that injury last year and did not look good down the stretch. So I want to take under on that. And the narrow passing in target tree on the Rams side, I think overs on Allen Robinson, overs on Cooper Kupp make a lot of sense because there's really not a lot out there as far as, ancillary pieces in the passing game outside of Robinson and Kupp. So I think chasing overs there might feel like a donkey move, but I think it makes a lot of sense because there's just not a lot of other options.
I love it. Well, on that note, we will get you out of here. We appreciate your time and joining us. Where can people find you? It's going to be a lot, but where can people find you on the internet and thereabout?
Move the Line is our podcast at 4for4. Week 1 episode is tonight live, 7 p.m. Eastern, just essentially an hour or so before kick. And then also on Fridays at 2 Eastern will be our prop show if you're into prop betting.
I heard there's an awesome new intro for the Prop Drop Show.
There is an awesome new graphic for the intro of the Prop Drop Show, which I'm excited for folks to see tomorrow. It is top notch. At Ryan Noonan on Twitter and 4for4.com.
There you have it. Go follow them. Go check out Move the Line, everything they do. Betsperts Golf probably back next week, right?
Back next week, yeah.
Because they're in Napa. So Noonan will be everywhere on this channel. You can find him. We appreciate your time, Ryan, and best of luck with all of your bets tonight and as the season goes forward.
Thanks, gents. Good to
catch
up with you.
All right, so we are going to try to speed run through the rest of the show, I think, because that went very long, which is fine with me. We're going to start
Football's king, anyways.
Yeah, it's good conversations anyway. I just have to save our voice because we have the Blogger Bowl this afternoon.
1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. Tune in live.
First touchdown scores from Noops. I don't know if have you looked at this list. Don't look at this list if you haven't.
I have looked at it. I watched a little bit earlier in the week when Noops was talking about it.
Gotcha.
But no, I have not done too big of a deep dive into it.
I was going to ask you to guess if you could guess anybody who you might think would be on. If you
I don't have to see the list. It's quarterbacks and it's tight ends and it's sometimes a second running back. I mean, it's what Noops
There you
does.
go. He's got Josh Allen at +1,000. We actually bet this at DraftKings at +1,300 the other day, so pumped about that. And then tight ends, as you talked about, Dawson Knox +1,300, Tyler Higbee +1,600, and then both defense and special teams, which I kind of love. I might see where this price is sitting later, and if I get really antsy, pick one of them. My philosophy, I tend to usually just play smaller and just pick one on each side to give me a rooting interest on each side. I have Josh Allen, so I'll probably pick a Rams player. Are you going to play, or do you have any intention of playing anything?
So I was just scrolling through FanDuel now. I saw James Cook at +3,200. I like taking some flyers on those secondary running backs because there are a lot of times where a main running back will get you down and then you'll switch to a second package and you see those guys come in the red zone and break one off. I don't really know how they're going to use the Bills are going to use their running backs. Obviously, Singletary's their one. I don't know if Cook's going to end up getting more carries or snaps than Moss or vice versa. But at 32-1 for a running back that'll probably get some run, I like that there. And I do want to take a roll of the dice on Allen Robinson at I think it's +950. a little bit shorter than I like, but I think he's going to have a massive year for the Rams. He, when interested, when engaged, when not ignored by Matt Nagy, was really, really good in Chicago. Like that first year when they were 12-4, went to the playoffs, he was absolutely outstanding. He was a superstar wide receiver. And then the years went on. Nagy forgot how to adjust and call offenses. He became disinterested. Clearly wanted out. Played with some bad quarterbacks. I think you're going to see a guy who makes a bigger impact than Odell made in that Rams offense last year. I think he's young. I think he's rejuvenated. And I think you're going to see a guy who gets a lot of attention taken off him because Cooper Kupp's going to have all of it. And I think he's way too good to not soak up a lot of attention. So I think he's going to have a lot of favorable matchups. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get one, on a deep ball early.
That all makes sense to me. Do you want to go first with your bets today, or do you want to take a break and catch your breath? And I'll
You go. I need to.
All right. So first off, I have, as I'm stalling, I have what I have called the Producer Dan Sports Misery Parlay for the weekend. Alabama minus 20.5 against my alma mater, the Texas Longhorns. Saints.
Sorry, Dan.
I forgot to update that. That's supposed to be Saints money line against the Falcons, because I actually think the Falcons are. I would probably, if you put a gun to my head and said you had to make a pick, I'd probably take the Falcons there. And then Toronto FC plus 230 against Atlanta United. The odds of this come out to plus 826. Texas, you'll hear my full take on the Alabama-Texas game on the Blogger Bowl. The long story short on that one, Texas just does not have the guys right now to compete with Alabama. Their offensive line and defensive line just aren't good enough. Quinn Ewers, while he might have potential, he is probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed in this game. And Nick Saban, while he's not the kind of coach to run the score up late, I think he's going to run the score up early in this game. So there's that. Saints are a better team than the Falcons. I just wanted to say this, and I'm going to put this out there, and I don't care if anyone pushes back on this because they're wrong. This is the best rivalry in the NFL, because my argument for this being the best rivalry in the NFL is I would say that these two fan bases, the highest percentage of fans of these two teams would say the opposing team is their least favorite. I think the only rivalry in the NFL where there's this much pure distilled hatred between two fan bases, maybe Bears Packers, but that's kind of like, to me, a historical rivalry.
No, but I'm not trying to one up you, but there's hatred there. If you just from going on what you said, if you ask any Bears fan what team fan base they hate the most, they say the Packers. If you ask any Packers fan, I would say 99.99 would say the Bears, and maybe 0.01% would say the Vikings. But for the most part, those are very agreed upon. We are our biggest rivals and hate each other.
And I would say,
to your point, I agree with you.
Falcons fans and 100% of Saints fans would say they hate the other team. So I think the Falcons are going to end up being a little bit more competitive in this game than people think. And I don't think that's hopium there. I legitimately think you get divisional games, rivalry games. In the first week of the season, those tend to be weird. As for Atlanta United, their playoffs hopes are basically done at this point. And then even though he's not their best player anymore, he's still the best player in franchise history. Joseph Martinez has basically not started for now 5 games in a row. He was pissed off after the Portland game that he didn't start, so he flipped over the post-game meal table after the game in the locker room, got into a shouting match with the manager and had to be separated and got suspended. So things are going great there. I want to do the draw no bet as part of this parlay, but FanDuel won't let me, which is disappointing because I thought this was America. So I really like the draw no bet for Toronto. If you don't know what that means if the game ends in a draw, you just get your stake back. Obviously, the odds are less than the plus 230, but I don't care. Atlanta United's kind of a mess, so we'll roll with it. That's Alabama minus 20.5. That is the Saints money line, not the spread. That was a mistake on my part. And then Toronto FC plus 230 against Atlanta. You can get plus 826. Now, the odds on the Toronto game have shifted, disappointingly, by the way. When I started to put this together last night, the odds on this parlay were plus 770, which 770 is one of the area codes in Atlanta, which was kind of perfect. But alas, that didn't work out. And we'll wrap the show with Matt. You have a parlay here. And of course, it wouldn't be Matt on Brown Bag Bets without a Chicago White Sox Chicago White Sox bet. And I really, really hope you appreciate the logo.
Did you throw Illinois Wesleyan Fighting Titans?
I did throw an Illinois Wesleyan Fighting Titans because I didn't feel like putting a Mississippi State, Fresno State, and White Sox logo. I thought that would be busy. So I went with the alma mater, the Illinois Wesleyan Fighting Titans.
Here we go, Titans. I think they open up this week against Ohio Wesleyan, so we'll be taking a look at that. No lines out on that, unfortunately. Maybe by the Blogger Bowl, I could scrounge something up. I'll start with the White Sox. This one's just more of a fun, looking for some action. The MLB slate's pretty low today. I think there's only 6 or 7 games. I like the White Sox first half margin by 1 to 2 runs, mainly because I like the first half under. Dylan Cease throwing for the Sox. Last time out, he was an out away from a no-hitter against the Twins. He's also got a little bit of a window here with Verlander hurt, with McClanahan hurt, to make a push for a Cy Young. He's kind of closing in on Justin Verlander if you look at the odds. And they play the A's, who are, Oakland has been a little bit of a house of horrors for the Sox in years past. The A's are really, really bad. So I see the Sox starting out with starting out slow offensively, even though they have been better at the plate. In the last couple weeks, it's been more of late inning hits coming up in the clutch. JP Sears throws for Oakland, limited action this year. He's actually been very good. So I think the Sox are leading this game, 1-0, 2-0 after 5. And then I am going to go with my fade the Pac-12 after dark parlay. We're going to take Mississippi State's money line at Arizona. That's minus 430. The spread's minus 11.5, and weird things happen in the Pac-12 after dark, so I don't want to touch that. But I do like them on the money line. And Fresno State's money line is now, I think, minus 110. I think that game's a pick 'em now. They're getting a little bit faded because of their, I don't want to call it a bad performance against Cal Poly, but they didn't quite live up to expectation. I think they kind of sleptwalked through a week 1 matchup. Oregon State played really well at home against Boise State, but as we saw last year from splits, Oregon State's a different team on the road as they are at home. So I'm going to take some money lines here. Mississippi State with Mike Leach, who knows a little bit about coaching Pac-12 after dark games to get Mississippi ready to win a game on the road at Arizona, and Fresno State to get the job done at home against Oregon State, and plus 140. Not the juiciest parlay, but we still got some plus money there.
Love it. Yeah. As of right this second, at least at FanDuel, Fresno State is back out to a 0.5 point favorite in that game. And I read that wrong because I was going to take issue because for some reason I thought you were going to take you were going to roll with Oregon State there, but you're not. And I'm going to take that one out. I have an opinion on the other game that you gave out there for the total, which we'll talk about this afternoon. I'm sitting out that Fresno game because I have no idea what to expect, but we will talk a lot of college football this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Blogger Bowl. So be sure to check that out. Andy and Noops will be back tomorrow, we presume. I have no idea where in Vegas they are going to be, but they are both going to be in Vegas. And I think for the first time since I've been producing this show, they're going to be in the same place. Like they're hopefully going to be hanging out together and doing brown bag bets, getting you ready for the weekend. The U.S. Open semifinals will be going on. I think the U.S. Open women's semifinals are tonight. Pour one out for my perfectly profitable Pagula parlay. Pagula lost last night, but the U.S.
Her
Open
clip yesterday about drinking the Heineken was hilarious.
It was very funny. Shout out Francis Tiafoe, the young American making it to the semifinal, the first African American to make it to a semifinal at the U.S. Open since Arthur Ashe. Playing at Arthur Ashe is pretty awesome. So there's that. There'll be college football. There'll be NFL football. Football is here. Enjoy the games tonight. Oh, Andy and Drew will be live at halftime tonight. No idea where Andy's going to be. Think Drew's going to be at the game. So the feed is probably going to be terrible in terms of like the audio and video quality, which is going to make it more entertaining. But
it's authentic. It's raw.
Authentic.
Real.
So me and Matt and Phil at 2:00, halftime tonight. Andy and Drew, and then Andy and Noops will be back tomorrow for Brown Bag Bets. For Matt, I'm producer Dan, and they will see you guys tomorrow.